Hello and welcome back to Vegas Aces. My name is Heather Ferris and I'm really excited to share that we have a special guest today. You guys might know him. He's been on a few times before, and if you haven't already, check out his website. We have Marc. How are you doing? From TruePokerDealer.com.
Love the energy. I'm doing great. And thank you for having me here. And good times on Vegas Aces.
Totally. Now, I'm really excited today. You are going to be talking about calling over your floor supervisor. And I think this is going to be really interesting because blackjack dealers have to do this too. So I'm really interested to see what the similarities and differences are.
Yeah. So calling the floor in poker is definitely, it has some similarities. I mean, a long time ago, I'm no Heather, but a long time ago, I did deal table games as well. And I'm excited to hear what you have to say as I go through this.
So how is calling a floor supervisor over? How could we make a video on that? Because people who are watching, they're like, well, you just call over the floor supervisor and you're done. That's like it. There's nothing to it. Floor. Okay, that's the whole video. So what is it what more do they have to know when calling over the floor supervisor?
Great question. So in poker, when you have to call a floor, you go floor, and then that's it.
And the video's done.
But in all seriousness, right. So what you really have to do in poker is, so there's a few pieces to this, right? There's how to call the floor, and then there's when to call the floor. Yeah. And it's not exactly the same in poker as it would be in table games. So the first thing that I'll say is, while this is also true in table games, in poker, it's really a very competitive environment. And so anytime a player asks for a floor, you call the floor. By the way, I will say how to call the floor at the end of all these. Okay, so anytime a player asks for a floor, you call the floor. All right, so that's number one.
What?
There's no exceptions. There's no decision on that. Okay. You will get yourself in some pretty good trouble if you do not get a floor when you're asked to. Also, whenever, so another time to call the floor is whenever a decision must be made. Now, a decision in poker is along the lines of when something went wrong and it must be fixed, or even if something went right and the players are insisting that it went wrong and it must be fixed, right? That's anytime you need a supervisor, and there's so much variation to that. And a lot of new dealers have trouble calling the floor because it feels like they're tattling on themselves. Yeah. And to a degree you are, but so that's a second situation.
And the other thing too is the break-in dealers, they see that the floor supervisors, especially in blackjack, they have 8 games and they're running around like chickens with their heads cut off. They're constantly busy. And I think a few break-in dealers just don't want to annoy them or bother them. And I try to tell them, that's what they're there for.
Absolutely true. And it's the same feeling in poker. And look, floors, I've been a floor. A floor has a tendency to come over with this like, oh my God, you're calling me vibe. And it's like, it's warranted a lot of the time anyway. I've been a floor in table games and in poker. So I definitely have received that. Like I had to put a mask on when I coded tables because I did not want to give that, but it can be difficult when a dealer's in a situation when a player is telling them that something was incorrect in the hand, and the dealer is like, no, I know exactly what this is. Here's what it is. And then the player starts insisting that it's wrong. The dealer sometimes doesn't even feel like the floor is necessary. So part of what I'm saying right now is you never argue with the player, right? Yes. You just call the floor. And yes. That is, I think, pretty consistent in table games, right?
Yeah, it is. And the reason why we do that on table games, it's you don't say anything, you don't do anything. At any point, just call over the floor, because when you call over the floor, you are shifting that responsibility over to the floor supervisor. So now you are no longer responsible for what happens. They are. If you take care of it yourself as the dealer, not only will you get in trouble, but now you are responsible for this. So that's like even more trouble. So it's not a good idea at all.
Totally makes sense. Now in poker, it's interesting because it's player versus player instead of player versus house. So sometimes the dealer has the thought to themselves, well, I can be the official for this because it's just between them, and the casino's not pressuring them as much with some of the things that you receive as a table games dealer about how every single dollar belongs to the house. If you mess it up, like all this stuff, it's just a different vibe. So sometimes that can be confused, but the result is the same. So the next scenario is when something unusual happens. And if it feels unusual, it's unusual. Just
Yep.
call a floor. It's that simple. I could go up through some examples of that, but I mean, use your judgment. You have to be a human decision maker to call the floor. You don't make the decisions of what to do at the table, though.
Right.
So if it feels unusual, it is. Another scenario, when a player has crossed the line with you or another player, such as if they're confrontational with you or another player. And this one can be pretty tricky in poker because a lot of the time someone will go all in and lose all their money and then curse. And it's like, did they cross the line or not, right?
Yeah.
You don't really want to needle a player in that situation. So a good little tip and a good little example of how to think about this. First of all, it's whatever your poker room says. But if you haven't been given any instruction on it, think of it like this. If a player curses at someone, doesn't matter the scenario. Okay? If a player threatens somebody in any way, ask them to take it outside, anything like that, automatically call the floor over. These are the types of confrontation that I'm talking about here.
Yeah, definitely. And then just real quick while I'm thinking about it, we were talking about unusual. So when you say unusual, what I try to tell my students is blackjack and every other game that you're dealing, you're always following the same procedures constantly over and over and over again. So everything should always be the same. Anything unusual would be anything that breaks from that normal procedure.
That's very good phrasing. Yeah.
And the reason why we do this is because if it breaks normal procedure, there might be a chance that cheating is happening. And that's the whole point of having those procedures in place to begin with.
So that's awesome and makes a lot of sense. And that's interesting to the way that comes to me is in table games, that's because it's house's money, right? And so that perspective is fascinating to hear. In poker, because it's not house's money, it's more about maintaining comfort with people at the table and just creating a procedure that always gets the right person there to make a decision that creates comfort where it's going to be handled. Because they're just not worried about anybody stealing as much in poker. There's nothing to really steal from the house. That being said, they don't want it, but it just doesn't matter in the same way. So when a player comes at the dealer insisting that they did something wrong or needs any type of explanation for any type of conversation, if they're not listening to the explanation that they're being given, that's a time to call the floor, because it's not about who's right. It's just about getting the thing resolved. And as we said before, you can't go back and forth with the player. So anytime they're not really understanding or listening, maybe it's not about that, right? Maybe the real reason that they're coming at you as a dealer is because they've lost money and they have a certain feeling that they don't know what to do with. And they're just putting it onto you. Once you start realizing that you're not getting through to a player, just call the floor.
Yeah, definitely. And that'll save you a headache too.
I was thinking about the next one. It's like simple, but when someone needs medical, that does come up sometimes. I have been both a floor and a dealer in situations where a player has fallen out of their chair or passed out or something like that. I'm sure your stories are better than mine, even.
No, but definitely had a heart attack at a table.
Yeah, stuff like that happens. And don't think. So there's a tendency when that happens for the dealer to watch, right? Just immediately call the floor. Yeah.
You got to watch because I had to watch. I couldn't do anything because the guy had a freaking heart attack. And I swear to God, all the other players on the craps table, they just stepped right over the guy and then they continued playing. And I'm like, is anyone else seeing this? Like, am I the only one seeing this? I had to look.
That's pretty intense. I wasn't saying that you can't look. I'm saying I'm saying look, but call the floor. Don't get distracted.
Floor.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. So that's funny that came through that way. Yes, I will look as well. I watched. It was like 2 months ago. There was a drunk 400 something pound guy. He could have been more than that. Got up from the table and within 15 steps, step, crashed, fell over. And it's
Oh,
like, you know, just call the floor. Listen, if there's 10 people calling the floor, that's fine. You know,
yeah.
you don't need to worry. Just do it.
And there's going to be times where the floor supervisor's busy. So when you do call over the floor, you might have to wait. And just wait. I mean, it's better to wait and get the floor's attention and have him come over and do whatever you need done than trying to fix it yourself because you think the game needs to be going.
Absolutely. And as a dealer, you are trained to keep the game going all the time. And
Yeah.
when you're calling the floor is the exception. Very well
Yeah.
said. You're welcome. Last one here. This one's sort of interesting. I don't know how this works in table games exactly, but so sometimes you're not going to just call the floor. Sometimes you're going to offer for a floor to be called. And
Okay.
this comes up in a situation where a player is, well, so you can make a judgment sometimes, right? If a player seems to have a gripe about something, maybe they're not directing it at you, maybe they're just sort of saying it out loud, maybe they're saying it to another player, you can offer to call the floor in that situation. If they are sort of giving their opinion about your dealing, you can offer to call the floor in that situation. And this is especially good for new dealers. I had someone in my live stream this past Tuesday ask me, like, what do I do when the players start giving me a hard time and I'm new and I actually suck? So I gave, so when you're new, there's so much that you're learning, especially as a poker dealer. It takes, 2 to 6 months to really get comfortable. And in that phase, you don't necessarily have the ability to think. As crazy as it is, you're doing so much already that's untrained for you that you're still learning. So I tell dealers in that situation, if someone is giving you feedback and you just don't have the ability to grasp all of it in the moment, you can offer to call the floor so that way you at least resolve the thing that's being brought up.
That's a good one. That's really good.
Something that I forgot. Sometimes when you call a floor, you have to be subtle. Okay. Actually, you know what?
Yes, I wanted to talk about that.
Okay. So what we'll do now is we will start with how to call the floor, the teaser at the beginning. All right. So in poker, the first thing you do is you say whatever the terminology is for the poker room. Some tell you to say floor, some tell you to say supervisor, and either of those is fine. It's whatever. So you would say supervisor, and then you say table number blank in poker. So it's supervisor, table number 6, and you put your hand up. Okay, you've got one free hand and a deck in the other hand. So these 3 things are very important. You say supervisor, and you do it loudly. Don't be a wimp. Okay, you have to get your supervisor's attention. They're busy and distracted and not listening to you.
And casinos are loud and noisy, and there's a lot going on. You have to be loud.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be. You do not want to be the dealer who has the other players at your table repeat floor louder than you just said it, right?
Yeah, seriously.
So you say it loud. You say table number. I'm using 6 as the example. Floor, table number 6, and you're putting your hand up so that when they look, if they didn't happen to catch the number, which happens, then they see where the incident is.
Okay.
And then you want to do a quick, this isn't, so in table games, you have to protect your well and all that stuff. You still have to do that in poker, but in poker, you don't have to put as much energy toward it. You can definitely look, and even if it's behind
you could turn your back on the bank. Oh, so that's a big no-no.
You can't like turn your back on the bank, but you can sort of be a little bit less right on it.
Protective.
Okay?
Yeah, because with dealers, it has to be in front of you.
You can go and get even deeper into your peripheral vision if it's like behind you that you have to go. All I'm trying to say is in a poker room, you might have 50 tables and you might be the furthest one. And if that's the case, you might have a supervisor podium that's way across the room. And when you're yelling, turning does 2 things. It lets you know if they saw you, and it helps your voice travel.
Yeah.
So it can help. That one's a little bit situational, but
Now, the difference between what you said in table games, and of course, every casino is different, so this does not apply to all casinos. But we do the same thing. We'll say floor and we'll put the hand up, but we won't say the table number. We'll just say floor and do the hand up. We'll turn our head like so, but we have to keep our body square to the game. We can never turn our back to the bank. And when I say turn back, even turning sideways like so, they would consider that like turning your back to the bank. You have to be square at all times. And then to go off of what you were saying before about how you have to be subtle, if you're having a cheater or a certain person on the table that you don't want them to know you're calling the floor for certain reasons, dealers will do certain actions that are very unusual on the table, and that action alerts the floor supervisor that their attention is needed. And I'm trying not to say specifically what that action is. I'm trying actually to not say that, just because then if everybody knows, they'll know exactly what it means, you know.
I can tell you guys right. No, I'm just kidding.
And then we see a big cutout like this.
Yeah.
This section has been cut out of the video. This section has been censored. Wow, really? They really do. Oh my God, I can't believe that. I just can't believe you told everyone that. I wonder if we're going to keep that in.
Oh, you're saying that. No, I still think you're like freaked out about the fact that I said dealers in poker can turn more. Let me say this, okay? I do want to qualify this. When you turn, you are still responsible for that bank. Don't think you're not, okay? But in poker, generally, there's less money in there, which is the truth, right? But you're still responsible for it. So, you know, try to keep your peripheral in it. But I like I like that you took that other joke so far too. So to respond to that, in poker, you have, generally speaking, either Bravo, which is poker software, or Poker Atlas, Table Captain. And there's some other versions of it too. And they allow you to call the floor in a very subtle way. So you can actually put on a floor light in most poker rooms nowadays by just hitting the electronic panel in the correct location. And a supervisor will come over, hopefully within 5 to 10 minutes.
Nice.
And they come over to the table and, you know, depending on what's going on, you communicate to them. But it's not that hard. So in poker, most of the time, the supervisor is going to come around the back of you, right over one of your shoulders. At least that's what I teach. And when they do that, you can put your hand up like this and say something quietly and get away with it almost all the time.
Nice.
So that is an option there. And, you know, you could say, you know, seat 2, blah, 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 whatever happened, or I have to go to the bathroom, you know, like,
or I already went to the bathroom.
Oh gosh, don't say that. Well, if it's true, say it, but don't have that be true.
Oh, well, there's a lot of things you could call the floor for, and not all of them the floor wants to hear. But I really appreciate you going through and explaining this and giving more detail about it. And could you tell people who are watching where they can find you and get more of this information?
Sure, and I appreciate that. I am Marc Shumsker. I am known on YouTube as True Poker Dealer. You can find me on at literally youtube.com/True Poker Dealer, one word, or you can just search True Poker Dealer here. And then I also do have truepokerdealer.com. But really, I'm on YouTube most of the time. So that's the spot to find me. True Poker Dealer on YouTube. And I do live streams every week.
And we have those links in the description, so that way you could just click and go directly there. Check out all of his videos. Be a member. You could sign up to his channel and be a member and everything, and you get a lot of goodies with that. So thank you. Thank you very much for being on. Thank you for being a guest, and really do appreciate you doing this.
Always happy to come and spend some time with you, Heather.
Thank you. And if you guys are watching, we will see you next week. We have a live stream every Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Until then, have a good one.